This video is sponsored by MPB. Hello everybody, how's it going? Hope you're all well. Welcome back to the channel. Most intelligent photographers who employ multiple lenses to carry out their photography duties, they have the common sense to make sure that those lenses in question complement each other and don't step on each other's toes too much. And that might manifest itself in a number of different ways, but most commonly you'll see setups such as the Holy Trinity, where a photographer will have a wide-angle lens, a standard lens, and a telephoto lens. That's not what this is, because I'm weird. These lenses are all basically the same in some ways, and I own all of them. And today I'm going to discuss why that is. It's a bit strange. They're all standard lenses in some form. Also, all the photos that I've just shown you were shot with just one of these lenses. Can you guess which? That's a stupid game, actually. No, it was this one, 2870 f2. Been using this lens quite a lot recently. I'll explain why in a minute, but yeah. Let's start with this lens. So this is the 2470 f2.8 GM Mark II. I don't know that I've said all those in the right order, but this is the most impressive lens that I have ever used. It is significantly lighter than its predecessor, the Mark I, and indeed most, if not all, other 24-70s. I should have probably checked that before saying it. And optically, it's phenomenal. Doesn't matter the aperture or the focal length. It's amazing all over the frame at any focal length, at any aperture. I don't know if I'm getting across how incredible it is. And of course, you'll know this if you have this lens. What you might also know if you have this lens, or indeed any other 24-70, is that they're quite boring lenses. And to be honest, as photographers, we fit into one or two camps. Either you think that's just ridiculous, it's just a lens, use it. Why does a lens need to be entertaining? That's nonsense. Just take photos with it. Or like me, you fall into the camp that, yeah, 24-70 is not that interesting. Your eyes get taken by other kinds of lenses. I'm quite infantile. I need to be entertained and engaged by external things at all times, including lenses. And the 24-70, despite being the most impressive lens I've ever used and owned, doesn't quite do it for me. So that is how I ended up with this when it was announced. This is the 24-50mm from Sony. And, well, this is an f2.8 lens as well, and it's tiny. Basically, it's the same size as the 24mm prime that I'm filming this on right now. This is a G lens rather than a GM. I'll need somebody who knows what they're talking about to explain the difference between those two in the real world, because I don't notice much of a difference. But I would say the 24-70 is definitely a bit sharper. I should probably try to quantify that because I don't use charts. If I showed you a ginormous print taken on one of these two lenses, you wouldn't be able to tell me which it was. Now, when you pixel peep, there is sometimes a difference. The 24-70 comes out on top, but it's minute. And these two lenses perform way beyond what I need in the first place, so it's not relevant. Now, the tininess of this 24-50 becomes even more apparent for me because I shoot often between sort of 35 and 50mm, as many of you will know if you watch this channel a lot. And at 50mm, this is the size of the 24-50, because when you zoom on this lens, you actually zoom towards 24, you zoom out, and at 50mm, it's actually collapsed. Whereas on the 24-70, this is 50mm, and at 70, it's actually really quite a big lens. Now on the 24-50, obviously you can't get to 70, and so lots of people will think, well, it should be a small lens. You're missing out on 50-70mm. But A,
I don't shoot between 50 and 70 all that often, and B, when I do, I'm typically shooting on the Sony a7R Mark V, which has got 60 megapixels, so I can crop a little bit if I need to. And so what that leads to is this being my favourite lens ever. Most impressive lens I've ever used, favourite lens I've ever used. Now, if I could only have one of these three lenses, and I've not spoken about this one yet, but if I could only have one of these lenses, it would be the 24 to 70, because it's the most versatile. But if I can only have two of these lenses, then I'd get rid of the 24 to 70 and I'd have these two. So I should probably talk about this one. I should say actually, before I start talking about this lens, I attempted to make this video last week on the Greek island of Kos, where I was on a family holiday, but I was a bit under the weather, as you might still be able to hear now, and consequently I was moaning even more than usual.
Any other excuses before we get started? I've not had a coffee this morning. Got a coffee machine in our room, but had I used it, I think I'd have woken everyone up and caused the breakup of my marriage.
Basically, last week I spent about 98% of my time underwater in the swimming pool, pretending to be a shark, which I think Noah enjoyed, but came at a cost. My health. Anyway, then I got back to Wales, tried to make this video again, but I was still moaning.
Am I going to get wet?
In any case, before I talk about it, here are some more photos I've shot over the past few days with this lens. So I would imagine you're thinking, what on earth have I bought this for, given that this is my favourite lens, and part of the reason that this is my favourite lens is because it's so much smaller than this, which is so much smaller than that. Why have I got this? Basically, I realised some time ago that if something cataclysmic happened that meant I lost the backups of all my photos, if all the cloud services that I used were ripped down, if I lost my hard drives, if I had no access to any of the photos that I've taken in my life so far, I'd be pretty distraught, to be honest. But there's only like a subsample of photos that I would be willing to give every penny I have for. And they are the photos of my kids. And the reason for that really is that the photos that are kind of in my portfolio, I can take all those again, or I can take photos very similar to those again, should I ever need to. I mean, I'll keep taking photos for the rest of my life. It'd be a real pain to not have those and to not have any of the work that's kind of gone before right now, but, you know, I'd live. But if I was to lose the photos of my kids, I can't get those photos back. My children will never be those ages that they were when I took those photos ever again, quite obviously. So those photos would be gone, which would be heartbreaking. And it was at that moment that I realised the importance of trying to photograph my kids as much as possible, as much as they let me, because those are the photos that are way more precious to me than any photos I've taken for anything that looks like work. And for a long time I've been trying to work out what equipment I could use to best take photos of my children. And I settle on my Sony setup because the IAF never misses. And often I was using my 24mm f1.4 that I'm filming this video on, but a lot of the time I was feeling like I wanted something longer, but I didn't want primes because I didn't want to be switching lenses while I was just shooting kids in the living room while they were playing. I just thought that would be a messy process. So I started looking at this lens and researching this lens, and this, the 28-70 f2 from Sony, this has been described by lots of people as like a prime killer. I'm not massively sure I subscribe to that, to be honest, and I'm not the person to really comment on it. I think wedding photographers would be able to give a much more balanced perspective on whether this is a prime killer. But I find that a bit of a strange premise because in order to think that this lens is a prime killer, you need to think that the difference, the one-stop difference between an f2.8 and an f2 lens is significant, while at the same time thinking that the difference between an f2 lens and an f1.4 lens, which is the same, one stop, is insignificant. And so I don't know if this is a prime killer or not. What I do know is that for the purposes of photographing my kids at home or in low light or just for really nice portraits, this lens is worth every penny I spent on it. And it's a really, really expensive lens. But because this is tasked with taking the photos that are most important to me, by far, this lens is worth its literal weight. And yeah, it's a big heavy lens. It weighs nearly a third more than this 24-70, and nearly twice as much as the 24-50. So I don't know that this is a lens that I'm going to take out with me all that much, but over the past week or so, I've experimented with that. And my conclusions are really that if I only had this lens, and I didn't have these two, obviously I would take this lens out with me. It's not so heavy that it's really, really burdensome. And to be honest, when you're assessing lenses and their weight and therefore their usability, I find it really important to go out and actually use them because their weight alone is not enough information. You know, how they balance on a body, where in the lens the weight sits, how much the barrel extends and how that affects the weight. These are all things that really matter. And my conclusion is that I would much prefer to take one of these lenses out with me wherever possible. But in a pinch, I've got no problem with taking this out and hanging it around my neck. The only real downside to having this on my neck or on my body at all is that with this mounted, my A7R5 kind of points down, and so the back of the bottom plate on the camera sort of digs into my body. That's a little bit uncomfortable, but yeah, it's not that heavy really. It's just very heavy compared to this. Anyway, that's a short little story time explaining how I've ended up with three lenses that are very, very similar. To be honest, I am contemplating selling my 24-70. I don't need this lens when I have these two lenses. The only reason I'm hesitating in selling the 24-70 is A, it's pretty bashed up. I've got some fairly significant scratches on the front element which don't affect image quality at all, but they're there and they'll affect the resale value. And it's also got quite a few other kind of dings on it. I've taken this all over the world, so that makes sense. And B, because I have a YouTube channel and I do lots of filming of myself and other stuff, it's kind of handy to have multiple lenses in the focal lengths that I typically use most for video and stills. So this does still have a place. If I was just doing photography, and particularly if this lens was in good condition, it would be gone in a heartbeat. But for the moment, I think I'm going to keep it. Absolutely bonkers having all these, but that's how I've ended up with all of them. And in my defense, I don't have a telephoto lens or a wide angle lens. This is it really. Anyway, I hope that was interesting or useful. Thank you so much for watching. And a big thank you to the sponsor of this week's video, MPB. And if you're looking to buy any of these lenses or any other lenses for that matter, or cameras, MPB is the first place I would recommend checking out. In some cases you can save hundreds, if not thousands, by buying used, and you're buying safe in the knowledge that every piece of kit on MPB has been checked thoroughly by experts before being listed on their website. And if you do buy used on MPB, everything comes with a warranty. And MPB is also the place I would recommend selling your kit as well. In my experience, selling equipment is a faff. You've got to deal with the listings, the fees, haggling, the questions, the disputes, the couriers, the insurance. But with MPB, you just get a free quote online instantly. And if you're happy with that quote, MPB will arrange for a courier to come to your house to collect the kit. And then once they receive it and assess it, they'll pay you very quickly. Super simple. So yeah, if you're looking to expand or indeed shrink your kit, then definitely check out MPB. Links in the description. Anyway, big thanks for watching. In the next video, I will be outdoors, hopefully not under the weather and not moaning. I mean, I'll be moaning, but hopefully not too much. See you then. Cheers.